All right, and hello. Welcome to Chapter 8, Lesson 3. We're going to start off with Mr. Kennedy, and now we're going to get on to Alexander's empire. So you guys keep asking, where's Alexander the Great? And this is where he's going to come around in ancient Greece, so it matters. Strong leaders can bring change to society, and Philip II and Alexander the Great are those two that are going to bring the strong change because they were strong leaders, and they spread Greek ideas and conquered lands. So chapter packet open. Let's get going and find out how they started. So here we have Philip II of Macedonia. And as a young man, so we're going to start with his early bit of his life. So my country, Macedonia, is where they are, and they mostly were made up of farmers. Let's see if I can get the pen out and working here. And Macedonia, you can see right there, is right there in Greece. So mostly made up of farmers. And I lived in Greece and came to admire Greek military skill. So I became king of Macedonia in 359 BC. So as a king, I trained a huge army using Greek tactics. The Greeks became divided after the Peloponnesian War. If you guys remember, the Peloponnesian War, the Greek city-states were against each other. So it really divided and weakened Greece. So that leads Philip II of Macedonia to taking over the Greek city-states one by one and conquered most of Greece by 338 BC. So that's Philip II of Macedonia, and you're going to see who's going to take over and really let Greece become what we know as an empire with Miss Hodges and Miss Tickle. So thank you guys. There's Mr. Kennedy. There's Macedonia right there in the northern part of Greece, and I'm going to let them take over. Bye, guys.
All right, so Alexander is going to take over. So Mr. Kennedy just talked to you about his dad and Philip II of Macedonia and how that he had a dream. And one of the things that Philip wanted was to conquer all the world like every emperor does, right? They want to do that. And so Philip began making preparations for that to happen, but he did die before that was able to be accomplished. And so, as usual, sons pick up where their dads left off, and Alexander starts that. One cool thing about Alexander is they knew from a young age that he was very brilliant. He studied in Greece. He studied under Aristotle. He studied at what is considered to be the best college of the world at that time, and he was very successful. He was brilliant. There's a story that goes with Alexander, and they said whoever could untie this special knot was going to conquer all of Asia. And it was called the Gordian knot. And he came and he looked at it, and it was very complicated and everything, and he wasn't looking at it, and he was like, what does it matter if it's a knot? And he just pulled out his sword and cut it right in half, and of course he did conquer all of Asia, so he did do what the prophecy said would happen. So here, let's get started with what happens with him. At 16, he was given command of an army. His father noticed that, this is before his dad died, he noticed that he had potential to be a good leader, and he was very smart about a lot of tactical things in battle. And so he was given an army to see what he could do. And so at 16, with his horse Bucephalus that he tamed when nobody else could tame this horse, and it was given to him as a gift by his dad, and his dad was super proud of him for doing that, and we can talk about that story in class a little later. But so he started going toward Greece with this army that he was given, and he was super skilled at picking the right places to have a battle. So his education, where he got all these things, all this information from, was he studied the old battles from the Persian and Peloponnesian Wars that we talked about before. He read all the Greek epics as a child, and he loved everything about Greece. He read all of Aesop's fables that they had. He read the books that Plato wrote. He read the books that Aristotle wrote. He read the plays that Homer wrote. He was very well read. And Mr. Willis likes to say that readers are leaders. And so if you are reading and you're reading a lot, you will be a leader one day. But as happens in the ancient world, sometimes tragedy strikes. And when he was 20 years old, his father was murdered. They do not know who orchestrated that. They don't know what happened. Lots of stories going on around that, but there's no actual facts, nothing written down. They never were able to figure out who killed him. And so Alexander becomes king. And after his father's death, he's ready to fulfill his father's dream of invading Persia. And he goes about doing that and does a great job. He has a huge advantage over most of the other armies. Alexander prepared for war against the Persians by developing a strong cavalry. We've not seen a lot of cavalry fighting since Sargon. That's not something that's happened in what we've studied since then. And so now these horses are coming back. And Macedonia, if you remember from the map, is closer to closer to where Sargon was from than the other places that we've talked about. So a cavalry, soldiers on horseback, lots of advantages of having a cavalry over having foot soldiers. So what I'd like for you to do is write 3 reasons why a cavalry would be more beneficial than to have foot soldiers. So a cavalry is a group of, for those of you who may not be super clear, you can see a picture of it right here down in the bottom corner. A cavalry is a group of soldiers who fight on horseback. They are on horseback the whole time. They have different weapons that they use, but they have horses. So what would be a benefit of having cavalry instead of just having a regular infantry army that fight on their feet? So the war with Persia, let's look at what happens with that. So Alexander is ready to take over this entire territory, and I'm telling you that is a kingdom to be proud of. Look at that pink color there on that map, and you can see all that he did conquer. So we are counting down. So as we're counting down, we're getting closer to 0. So these numbers are going backwards. So hang with me. So in 334 BC, he's going to defeat the Persian Empire, which is Turkey, which is, let's see, where's our little thing so we can write right in this area. Okay, so maybe not. Okay, right in this area, and then he's going to move east, and then he goes into Syria, 333. The cool thing about Alexander, he never lost a battle. Conquered all of Greece in like 2 years, and then he moves on to Persia. In 331, he conquers Egypt. He names a city right down here after himself, Alexandria. And we're going to see that there are Alexandrias all across everywhere. Here's one all the way over here where Bactria was. Remember those camels that we talked about? There's another Alexandria all the way over there next to China. And it was named after him. Then in 331, he heads back toward Mesopotamia after conquering all this. He's headed back home, and he conquers the rest of Persia. On his way home, however, they got all the way over here into northern India, coming back this way, and the soldiers were like, you know what, we've had enough. We are successful. We do win everywhere we go. Thank you, Alexander, for your great battle plans. We are successful. Never lost a battle. But the soldiers were like, you know what, we're done. We are ready to go home. We don't want to go any further. And so without an army willing to fight for you, you can't really go very much further. And so Alexander agreed, and they were returning home. However, Alexander doesn't make it home to rule this whole empire. They get about all the way to Babylon, which is in Mesopotamia. We talked about that area earlier, the Babylonian Empire. At age 32, he actually dies. And again, we're not 100% sure what happened, why he died. Could have been a battle injury. Lord knows he had a few. Could have been a fever. Miss Tickle is saying it's a fever. He did get sick there and die, but we don't know what he got sick from. So she's absolutely right. He did have a fever, and then he died at age 32, which was sad. He was a super conqueror, never lost a battle. We can only imagine what would happen if he didn't die, what he could have accomplished. All right, Miss Tickle, are you ready? It's her turn. All right, guys. Oh, by the way, loved all the gold star answers. Good job.
Okay, so now you need to finish filling in. All along the way, I named cities after myself and his horse. Remember, he loved his horse. So what is it? Bucephalus. Okay, we'll go ahead. Bucephalus. Most of the cities that you're going to hear about, though, are named Alexandria. So remember it. Don't forget it. Alexander's legacy. Alexander's armies extended Greek rule, culture, language, ideas, and architecture over the areas they conquered. This started the beginning of the Hellenistic age. In your word wall, this is called the Hellenistic era. It means the same thing. So when we are spreading out those ideas, beliefs, culture, language, What is this called, guys? Come on, you know this. Write it in. Cultural diffusion. This is huge from Greece. You've already seen so much that we've gotten in cultural diffusion. Alexander was helping to spread this. So Hellenistic means like the Greeks. Okay? After his death, Alexander's generals divided up the empire into 4 separate kingdoms. 4 separate. So he's died, the generals have taken over, and they've decided we're going to divide up this area. In each, Greeks and Macedonians controlled the governments. So as you can see in the map, you've got yellow as an area that a general divided up. You've got the green, you've got purple, and sort of pinkish right there. So they decided to divide up the kingdoms into those 4 separate areas. Now you have a hot question. Why might Alexander's generals have chosen to divide his kingdom after his death? What problems might arise from this decision? That is 2 questions. So how many sentences do you want? 4? I say 5.
I said 4 at least.
4 at least. So that means we better see more than 4. The hot question will be checked, guys. Make sure it's correct. You're coming up to FSA rights. We need to be working on this and getting this right. So no pronouns. Use vocab, 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 and restate your prompt. And you have 2 questions to answer. So we're going to be looking for the answer to both questions. Anything else you want to add?
No pronouns, Kennedy's kids.
No pronouns. None of our kids. No pronouns. Anything else? Oh, it moved on. The slide moved on.
Then we're done.
We're done.